For decades, our natural freedoms and civil liberties have been steadily eroding. Since the end of World War II, rather than greeting a brave new dawn of peace and prosperity, which was promised to us by our gallant leaders, we have in fact seen a steep rise in fascist governance steadily creep into our world and slowly take over our lives. This tiptoe tyranny has operated through stealth and deception, following the commercial agenda of special interests operating from behind the veil.
As an activist in social justice for almost 20 years, I've traveled the globe a great many times. And in that time, I have had thousands of conversations, many of them with world leaders, religious leaders, political leaders, cultural leaders, academic leaders. I've dealt with the governmental sector, the intergovernmental sector, the non-governmental sector. I've also dealt with grassroots activists in all walks of life. I will tell you that in the countless conversations and meetings that I've had around the world, one central theme has emerged time and time again. And that is in the shape of stark warnings to me, warnings that I should be very careful what it is that I'm saying and doing. Because apparently that is the status quo. That we live in a world where we should be afraid of speaking the pure truth. That we should live in a world where we couch our language, hide behind our words, and always shuffle along in tune to that status quo. I say no. I do not consent.
The rule of law has been hijacked in broad daylight. Justice is not served to the common men and women. It is the preserve of the rich and the utterly corrupt. Police brutality is sweeping the planet. Militarization of our streets and neighborhoods goes unchecked by our parliaments and our congressional leaders, almost all of whom were shoehorned into power by vested interests, and almost all of whom act in treason and fraud every day of their lives. What became of our oath keepers? What became of our protectors and our public servants? What became of our innocence?
No one becomes a barrister or a lawyer or a judge or any kind of legal officer in the hope that the world will stay the same. They do it because they want to make it better. They want to see changes happen. But we have a system that doesn't allow that.
We have permitted bureaucrats and technocrats, people lacking in creative imagination or a sense of spiritual dimension, to systematically take the reins of our lives and determine how we live, where we live, what we eat, who we marry, where our kids go to school, what our kids learn as truth and fiction, what we medicate ourselves with, how we spend our God-given time and energy, and ultimately what happens to our bodies and our estates, even after death. Our education system has been hijacked by social collectivist objectives which would make Stalin and Mao envious. Our global media and entertainment complex is now entirely in the hands of a small globalist cabal operating an esoteric agenda which seeks to destroy families, communities, and religious and cultural freedoms across the planet. It is a grotesque state of affairs, and one which is now functioning as a runaway train. It threatens to convert living men and women of the land into a drone class of microchipped, sedated, genetically downgraded worker bees. The cries go unheard as the deafening silence of injustice reigns supremely over hundreds of millions of good people who feel too small to be able to make a difference, who feel too exhausted and too impoverished to challenge the devil in our midst. We have had enough. Have you?
This is not the world we want to live in. This is not the legacy we choose to leave our children and our grandchildren, subject to the rules and regulations which are not laws. They are statutes and ordinances. They are statutory laws dreamt up by corporations and systems which seek only to harvest you and your time and your energy.
Fair play is missing in our courtrooms. They have become franchises, owned, operated and dominated by special interests. Now, judges rule in favor of those who pay their salaries, the bankster corporations posing as governments. Now, natural justice stands upon twin pillars that are really easy to understand. Number one, do no harm. And number two, do not allow others to harm you.
The ITNJ doesn't just come from the grassroots. It comes out of the grassroots and into the mainstream. It includes us lawyers, us judges, police officers, all of us who want to see justice prevail. It is for the people, it is by the people, and it is making a change.
The International Tribunal for Natural Justice is endgame. It is where we reclaim the rule of law, where we restore natural justice.
The ITNJ stands as a neutral tribunal to hear cases when those who are the arbiters of law do harm with no regard for the rule of law. Agents posing as public officials will not have the immunity of the corporate veil. They will be held accountable just as the judges at Nuremberg were held accountable when they followed orders that were both unconscionable and unconstitutional.
There are many things that have happened in this world that are wrong and continue to happen. It is for this reason that the Emerging People's Human Rights Authority was formed, to stand hand in hand with the ITNJ, to find those who've done wrong and those who've had wrongs done to them, and to redress them, and to make that difference.
Join us as we move toward the ceremonial seating of the ITNJ on the 15th of June. That is the 800th commemoration of the Magna Carta. That is where you and I and thousands of others around the world say no more. This is where we create our own jurisdiction. This is where we reclaim common dignity and our collective conscience.
It is my pleasure to invite you to participate in this unprecedented effort as we return justice making to the people.
5,000 people can change the world. Become one of them. Sign up and become enshrined as one of the founding advocates of this historic initiative. This is your court, by the people, for the people. Raise your voice with the rising chorus and contribute to the world you want to live in. It's time we stand together for justice. If you don't, who will?